everyone, it's Melissa with another craft activity for you. For today's craft, I thought I would show you guys how to make these origami paper spinning toys. These are a really fun craft to make. They look really fancy, but once you know how to make them, they're actually really easy and they're a lot of fun to play with. The materials for today are really simple. All you're going to need is 3 square pieces of paper. I have here some very large squares that I've cut out of computer paper. I'm using large squares today so that when I'm folding and as I'm folding, you can see at home the folds that I'm making and how I'm doing it. But this is probably a project that if you have origami paper at home, I highly suggest using it. You can use computer paper or thinner paper like that. I wouldn't recommend using construction paper only because we're going to be folding each piece a lot, and as you fold more and more, it's kind of harder to get your folds to be neat and the way that you want them. But once you have your 3 square pieces of paper, you're ready to get started. Alright, so I have my 3 pieces of paper ready. This particular project, you can see I used 3 pieces of paper on my model, and they're all different colors. The first piece we're going to work on is the centerpiece, so you can decide whatever color you want your centerpiece to be. That's the piece of paper you're going to use. I am going to make the center of my big model yellow. So I'm going to take my yellow piece of paper, move my other ones aside for now, and I'm going to take one corner and fold it up to the opposite corner to make a triangle and crease down the middle. I'm going to then unfold it and do the same thing with the opposite corners. So take one corner and line it up with the other corner. You want to make sure when you're doing this that you're trying to line up not only the corners so they make neat points, but also the edges of the paper. And then you're going to want to crease down the middle again and unfold. So you should have an X in the middle of your paper. You are then going to take each corner and fold it into the middle of the X, which will look something like this. Alright, so I've got all of my points folded into the middle, and you're going to do that 2 more times. So take the next round of corners, fold them into the middle, and then do it 1 more time. So it should look like this. Alright, so the next thing you're going to want to do is turn your piece of paper over, and you're going to want to fold it in half. So fold up and press, unfold, turn it 90 degrees. So you're basically making an X on the back of the piece of paper. You're then going to want to flip it over and fold it to make a triangle and unfold it. Then fold the opposite corners together to make another triangle. And when you've done that, what should happen is you'll pick your paper up and you'll see it's trying to not be flat anymore. It's coming to a point up here. You want to encourage that by kind of pushing the outside corners towards the middle. And you'll see it starts to take on this kind of X shape. And that's what it should look like. And this is your completed top piece. My second layer is going to be pink. So I'm taking my pink sheet of paper, and you're going to start very much the same way as the first piece that you made. You're going to take the points, opposite points, and fold into a triangle. You want to make sure that your crease is very well done, so you can go ahead and push down really hard with one finger and then unfold. And then you're going to do the same thing with the 2 opposite corners. Line up the corners and the edges, and then make sure your crease is very strong and unfold. And then you're going to take each of the points and fold them into this X that you made. Alright, you're then going to turn the paper over so that the flaps are on the bottom. and do the same thing with the corners. Fold them in to the center where the X is. You're then going to flip your page back over and do it one more time. So fold all of the corners into the middle. You're going to end up folding over these flaps. So once you've done that, you're going to flip it over again and take each of these corners that's in the middle and fold it back to meet the edge. So it should look something like this. You fold it back towards the edge. You're going to do that for all 4 flaps that are here. You should end up with something that looks like this. You are then going to take your first piece that you set aside, so my yellow piece, and tuck each of the points of your X. You want to make sure that it's sticking upwards. You're going to tuck each of those into the little flap that you've made. So here's the fold. There's like a little pocket in here. That's where you're going to want to stick the point of the X. And the nice thing is it should pop in pretty easily, but if it doesn't, you can always manipulate the X to make it a little easier. So it should look like this when you're done, and you can see it is not sitting flat anymore. It's starting to take the shape of a top with a point at the bottom. So this is your first 2 pieces assembled. You can set those aside and get ready with your third piece. My last layer is going to be my blue layer. So I took my blue piece of paper, and again, it starts the same way as the first 2 pieces. You're going to take opposite corners, make a triangle, and crease it, unfold it, do the same thing with the 2 opposite corners, unfold it, so you have this X. You're going to take the corners like we did with the first 2 pieces and fold them into the center of the X. Alright, and once you've done that, this is where it gets different from the first 2, and it gets a little bit more difficult because you need to fold it more, but it's actually really easy if you follow along. You're going to unfold each of those 4 corners. So your paper is kind of sitting like a square in the middle and 4 triangles on the edges. Flatten it out a little. You're going to take your bottom edge of your paper and fold it halfway to the top. So the center of the bottom edge should hit the middle of that square, in the middle of that X. Go ahead and crease it, turn it around, and do the same thing. That middle of the bottom edge should fold right up to the middle of that X that you've made with your diagonal creases. Alright, so you have this rectangle. You're then going to turn it 90 degrees again, so your rectangle is the long way this way, facing you, and take your bottom edge and fold it up to the middle. Again, you'll have an X to kind of guide you, and you want it to be in the middle point of that X. And you're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So you should have a square with 2 flaps. Alright, so this part is probably the trickiest part to explain, this next step, but if you follow along, and I'll try and do it in front of the camera so you can see, what you're going to want to do, to take the top flap, open it up, and you see how there's this other flap in there? Take this other flap and guide it to the side, and you'll see my paper wants to fold down, and that's okay. You're going to end up making this kind of triangle piece on the side. The folds should let you do that pretty easily, but you may need to guide it a little bit. You're going to do the same thing with the other side. Take the corner, bring it out to the side, and fold the top piece down. So what you should get is this trapezoid shape. You're going to do the exact same thing with the bottom flap. If it's easier for you, it's easier for me if I have that on top. Pull out the flap, kind of guide it to make this triangle shape, and do the same thing on the other side. And you can see my piece of paper doesn't really want to cooperate, but you can make it do it. So you should have this shape when you're done. It should look kind of like two flaps made out of trapezoids. All right, so then you're going to flip your piece of paper over so it kind of looks like a square with triangles sticking out of it. And you're going to take your paper, the top, fold it in half so that the bottom edges line up. And you'll get like, it kind of looks like a boat shape or an upside down trapezoid. You're then going to want to take this flap on the side, just the top layer, and fold it down to point towards you. So that's what it's going to look like. Again, the folds that we've made already should help you guide that, but don't be afraid to gently maneuver the paper so that it actually does what you want. You're going to then take the other flap on the left side and do the same thing. Flip your page over one more time and mirror exactly what you did on the first side. So take the flap on the right and fold it down, and the flap on the left and fold it down. So your page should look something like this, where it's straight at the bottom, at the top, pointed at the bottom, kind of flat. All right, so you're going to take this top right flap, and you'll see there's two pieces of paper, two layers that make up this flap. You're going to stick your finger in the middle of that and guide it upwards. So it's going to end up making a square when you push it down. And then you're going to want to do the same thing with all four flaps. So the two on the top, flip the paper over, and the two on the other side. So you'll have a rectangle. You'll want to then unfold the rectangle by picking it up. And you'll see there's two layers here. Just unfold that. So you should have a square with four flaps. All right, so for each of these four flaps, what you're going to want to do then is take the edges, and you'll see there with the four flaps there's loose edges. Take the edges and fold them into the center for the center of each flap, and you'll see that there's like a crease there, right where I folded. You're going to want to do that for each of the flaps. So it should look something like this. Once you've done that, you're going to take the corners of each of those flaps and fold them down over the two interior flaps that you've made. You're going to do that again for each of the 4 points. Now each of these folds that you just made on these flaps are now going to guide you for the next step. You're going to unfold all of them, and you can go one flap at a time if you'd like. I like to do them all at once just so everything gets a chance to relax. And then you're going to take the corner, the inside corner here in the middle of each flap, and it should just be the top layer, and you're going to fold it upward. And what should happen is you can see my piece of paper is trying to fold along those creases that I made on each of the flaps. This is probably the trickiest part of this whole spinning top project. But if you made your creases well, the paper should fold the way you want it to. And if it doesn't, you can always go back a few steps and refold. That's the nice thing about paper. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure that these are nice and creased. So you've made these kind of diamond shapes, and you're almost done with this particular piece. What you're going to want to then do is, there's still a set of flaps on the inside. You'll see there's one more layer of paper. You're going to want to take these and fold them outward to make triangles. And the inside points of those triangles should fall in the middle of those diamonds. So when you do that with all 4, it should look like this. And you can kind of see we're starting to make pockets for our other 2 pieces to fit in. So the last thing to do is just take the top points of your diamonds that you made earlier and fold them back down. And again, you can manipulate the paper so that it folds flat correctly. If you have to go back and fix anything, you can. So this is what you should end up with. Let's put our first 2 pieces into our third. Again, you're going to want to look for the pockets that you made. So in this case, my pocket is right here. And you're going to stick the points of your piece number 2 into those pockets. And if you need to manipulate the paper a little bit, that's okay. You want to make sure the points that you had folded into the center in the previous step are underneath the second piece of paper, so in my case the pink piece of paper. And you're just going to want to fiddle with it a little bit until everything fits snugly. You'll see it's not flat. It's got a little bit of a point at the bottom. And this is the part you're going to hang on to, the yellow piece of paper in my case, that first piece that you folded. You're going to put it on the table and ta-da! So that is how you make an origami paper spinning top. You know, the hardest part is probably this third bottom piece that you're making, but once you know the steps and you do it a few times, it's actually not that bad. And it makes a really great spinning top that works really well for it being made with only 3 pieces of paper. So that's it for today, for today's video. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.